Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riding from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelsen, professional horse trainer, and back with me is my basically co-host, Deb Romero, certified Alexander Technique instructor, and just wonderful person. So,
Yeah.
today's
Oh,
topic is being grounded in mind and body.
yeah.
Getting grounded. And this sort of has come up a lot for you in this past week.
hmm
It came up a lot with me with horses in training, especially starting to just
Ah,
pop a cork, act unusual. And it's where are we now? It's like mid-December. So we're coming up on Christmas. And we had this big storm come through that
yeah.
is kind of a tropical type storm. We've been having
hmm
winds, high winds for like a week. And so I'm sort of looking at the weather. I'm going, what is going on? And then it was just a series of catastrophes this past month in December where one of the horses in training, first we had all this rain. I had three horses in the barn blow abscesses after all that rain.
Yuck. Oh,
And then I was trying to film Ozzy in training for the owner, and he just would not pick up the trot under saddle and felt lame. So that's when I discovered his abscess. And then when I went to treat the abscess again the next day, he had stepped on a nail. And I was like, oh, you're kidding me. So he was in the stall for a week. He's bounced back from it, a whole bottle of antibiotics, stall rest for a week. He healed up beautifully. We were very lucky. And then I got
yay.
COVID. And it was like, and
It's not funny, but it's
it is
funny.
hilarious because it's like
Sorry.
it's just a bad script somebody wrote, right?
Well, Mercury is in retrograde, sorry to say.
Well, the other thing I heard, because I follow some like on NOAA, especially with this storm
hmm
coming in, and there's another website that tracks like solar flares and solar storms.
I saw that.
So not only are we having this wind and rain event that's semi-tropical that's blowing from the Gulf through Florida right now, we've been having massive M-class flares and M-class storms coming off the sun that also create solar winds. Maybe it's the reason we're having this unusual storm in December.
Maybe.
But I thought, there's more things going on in the world than we can see or know about. And sometimes we don't know why we get ungrounded or our horse gets ungrounded and we fall apart
hmm
and we just lose all sense of stability, organization, progress. It's like, so how do we come back or how do we deal with that? Like you said, you had a week like that where
hmm
you said it was mostly clients or you yourself too.
Not me, because I kind of prepare. I think my clients help me prepare because you've probably seen this, I'll have a week of people that come that have shoulder problems, and this past week was people just not staying grounded. With this time of the season, they're rushing and I even had my last client on Friday say, I just need you to ground me. It's like, okay, well, we'll both work on that. That sounds like a good idea. Um,
And what do
so
we
yeah,
mean
just
by
and then
like what does she mean or what do you mean or even what do I mean when we say grounded? We're kind
yeah.
of assuming everybody knows what that means. But what do you mean
Mm.
when you say grounded, or what was your client looking for when she said, help ground me?
Um, we tend to not be present. We're For instance, this client had all of her family coming to visit. So for her to even be present in the room and not be thinking about, oh, I've got to do this, this, and this, not for instance, just taking time walking to and from the barn, which you and I probably do a lot during the day, to be present, to notice our feet on the ground when we're walking, to notice the trees, to be very your peripheral vision and not tunnel vision.
Mm, yes. And I sort of think of grounded as like the ground. I go
Mm,
solid, stable,
mm,
sort of, I guess also mentally focused. And
mm-hmm.
so like in if my mind is spinning, I find even my connection to the ground through my skeletal awareness or working with gravity just goes out the window. So
Yeah,
the busier my mind is, it's like my body weight sort of shifts up. I use more muscular tension. I either am walking more on my heels or more on my toes, and I'm a little bit jerkier in my day-to-day activities rather than sort of smooth. And all of
and
that
that's
is how I
interesting,
recognize when I'm ungrounded.
right?
And I'll tell you, this COVID brain fog thing is
It's
real.
real, huh?
It is. Yeah, so I've had a very hard time mentally focusing, and I thought maybe I my energy was influencing the horses, but if it is, it's influencing every horse in the barn. They've all been acting the same way, also ungrounded.
Interesting.
Like I've had,
Ungrounded. Yeah.
bucking with a horse that n has never bucked under saddle, and little mini meltdowns. I mean, nothing really major,
Mm-hmm.
nothing dangerous, but just a lot of acting out, hard for them to get mentally focused in the work, or hard for them to stay calm and just do the
Mm-hmm.
regular routine that we've been doing.
Right.
Everything went out the window.
Yeah, and to not get sucked into that, to not lose our own groundedness while the horse is being expressive. I think, that's the same pull out of ourselves, not staying within. Even I had the same thing. My big mare didn't want to move at all. My little mare was running and bucking, and I'm like, who are you? I don't even know you, you 24-year-old thing. What are you doing? But to not get sucked into that, it's kind of like parenting, to not get sucked into your 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum on the floor.
I think at that moment, like what I found was it really called to my attention how ungrounded I was, how unstable I
Ah,
was in my own body and in my own mind. And so we have a choice at that moment. The more the horse is acting out, it takes some practice, but we learn to go the other way. So it actually helped me with the horses popping corks all week to sort of have to get calmer, to
mm-hmm.
really find my body, to relax the excess tension that I was carrying by letting my mind spin around and be unfocused. So it brought me back into my body. And on days I was doing groundwork, I really thought about my balance over gravity and just connecting into that sort of solid sensation of the arena underneath me
Yeah.
while this horse is flying like a kite on the long reins all around me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that it really helped actually in that context. It made me more self-aware of my own lack of stability or focus or calmness. And I
Mm.
had to get myself there in order to manage the horse that couldn't get there right away. So I found
Right.
working with horses
Right.
was actually kind of helpful. And I think this time of year, I call it the holidays, HOLLYDAZE. It's like happy holidays because our brains are going all over the place and we're, dealing with planning parties, getting gifts, seeing people we
Hmm.
haven't seen in a while. And so it's really easy to lose that calm place of stability inside of us.
Yeah. And maybe like you said, you have choices when that comes up to actually, well, maybe this isn't a great day to ride. Maybe I'll just go hang out with my horse, do something different, which is very calming.
Yeah. And that, like the mental focus exercise that I teach, just getting, well, I think we talked about it on one podcast, and a lady emailed me. She was so sweet, and she tried it and she called it meditating with her horse.
Oh,
A-
I like that.
And I thought, it's not actually that far away from a meditation exercise to just sort of like out on these blustery days
Hmm.
when a horse really can't get out of fight or flight. They're just sort of stuck there reacting to the environment or having a hard day, just woke up on the wrong side of the stall, whatever reason.
Hmm.
Taking that time, like I'll often sit on the mounting block and just sort of get my horse's mind focused on me, ears and eyes towards me, and then wait, just sort of
Wait.
wait at halt until the horse can think they're start like clicking into thinking rather
Hmm.
than, acting out and doing. Because what's
Fleeing.
very natural, I think, for us as well as horses is, when in fear, when in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. And and to do the opposite of that, to say, let's
Yeah.
not run in circles, scream and shout. Let's just sort of pause here. Maybe
I think
pause
that's
for
important to say, to keep saying it's a choice, and you have to train yourself to do this. It's not doesn't
it's not
necessarily come,
natural.
not at all. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why Alexander training is 3 years. This takes time to ingrain this into your system, that when you feel that thought, because I think it all starts with the thought of the hamster on the wheel. Yeah. Then that's where you really have a choice. Granted, you might have to start when you're already on the wheel, then figure out, oh gosh, I really don't want to go down this road.
How do I get off the wheel?
How do I get off the wheel?
And I think that's unique to everybody. I
I
think,
do too.
but it's going to involve what I find is it really essentially, especially for horses, breaks into two categories. Some horses and people can start to find that calmness or settle down by doing nothing, like being at halt, not moving, while other individuals really find it through movement, but that movement can just be the walk. It
Right.
doesn't mean you have to go blow out all this excess energy. It can just be a long rhythmic walk or a long period at halt. And
Hmm.
one way works better for some people and horses, and the other way is easier for some people and horses. So some people say, I just go take a walk,
Hmm.
put my phone on airplane mode, go take a hike through the woods, or go take a walk around the neighborhood. And after, say, a 20, 30-minute walk, I feel better. And other people want to sit quietly, maybe literally meditate, or just sit there and do nothing
Hmm.
for 20, 30 minutes. And that sort of restabilizes and grounds the mind and the body. And I don't think it matters. Like if I'm busy and I don't have time for a walk or time to sit down and meditate, even going through my barn chores or my work routine with the horses, I can pull that energy into my routine. So I can walk slower.
Yeah.
I can take more time.
Hmm.
I can stop and focus on one thing at a time instead of multitasking. And that has
Exactly.
a real calming effect for me if I just slow everything down and go, what do I need to focus on right now? Just one thing, right?
And I truly wonder, when you say slow things down, I'm very curious about that, because I don't. I don't know. I've always questioned this. If we actually physically slow down, or do we become more clear and able to achieve activities more thoroughly because we've slowed down our brain to
It's,
say,
I
okay, this
think
one thing.
this is a great
Does it make
example.
sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense.
Yeah, I've
And
always questioned that.
I think it's physiological. It's
Mm,
just like
okay.
you can't be, you can't give, like we have an expression of fake smiles, right? And what that means is the inside of that person doesn't actually feel happy or joyful. And it
Right,
comes across, even though they're forcing a smile on their face, it comes across inauthentic, not quite right. We somehow recognize that that's a fake smile. Do you know what I
right.
mean? And it's the same when we walk slowly, it's very hard to be tense or anxious because when we're anxious, we physiologically choose to walk quickly. And when we're tense, we tend to kind of not want to move. And the same is absolutely true for horses, right? So we might get ourselves out of that tension by walking. We might get ourselves out of anxiety by literally stopping our movement. Or we could choose to walk half the speed of our normal walk.
Hmm.
And I think that absolutely has a calming or grounding effect on how our mind is working and
Mm.
our breath and really all components because it's very hard to keep a steady, slow walk and be really angry or anxious or tense. It's like if I can kind of pace my walk to make it slow and thoughtful, it's very hard to hold these other emotions in the body and the mind at the same time that you're physically
Interesting.
moving slowly and rhythmically. And I think that's why taking a walk has the effect of regrounding us, making us feel stable again and clears our head, kind of gets all that clutter out of there.
Yeah, I remember when I was teaching at a massage school, one of the other instructors, a student came up to her very ungrounded, and she just said, "Go take your shoes off and go walk in the grass." She was
Yeah.
like, "Just go touch the ground, get grounded, everything will be okay."
Yeah, and it's the same with horses, like either a long period of halt or a long walk, right? And by long walk, I mean a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes of
Wow,
steady
okay.
walking, a minimum. And in that period of time, it's like if I can just keep a horse walking. So instead of taking a walk by myself in the woods or riding my horse in the woods or going for a walk in the neighborhood, sometimes I'll just walk the horse around the arena or I'll lunge the horse at the walk, right? If I'm good and the horse needs help, I can just lunge the horse at the walk or hand walk them and set the pace. And it's like the same thing that I feel in my own skin is what I observe all the time with horses. The longer you're walking, it's like that anxious, fast walk eventually slows down and becomes
Mm,
slower and more rhythmic. And the tension melts away. That resistance to forward starts to just sort of go away, and the walk again looks freer and looser in the horse's body. And so it's that same, it's a physiological connection. We can't really separate the thought functions, the electrical currents through
mm,
our brain and the biochemical, like all the hormones, all the chemistry that's
mhm.
running through our body with different emotions. We can't really separate that from movement. It's quite
Right.
hard to walk slow and be anxious. So
Yeah,
if I'm anxious, I can walk slow, and that helps dissipate that anxiety,
right.
slow and steady. Or if things are just feeling so out of control and so fast, I can sit there at halt, with me and my horse focused on each other. And it really becomes like a waking meditation. You're just sitting there doing nothing, literally. And what happens is the mind starts to slow down and then the
Mhm.
body starts to relax because you're just removing the potential of excess stimulation. That kind of, I think that's what spins the hamster wheel faster, is the more stimulation, the faster that hamster wheel goes.
Yeah, and to train yourself like we do as Alexander technique teachers is to keep yourself as an individual even when you have all these stimuluses out here. And that we have a choice to walk away from those stimuluses. You know,
Yeah.
there's all I know for me, there's been days where I've just had to say I can't possibly deal with this horse's emotional state right now. I just walk away.
Or just increase the distance between you and the
Yeah,
horse. Because
yeah,
if a horse is really acting out in an unsafe manner, my personal space bubble can be a long lunge line away from my
yeah,
horse's personal space bubble. And
right,
if they need to act out or they're having a very hard time walking or maintaining halt, then I can keep using the line at any distance to regain my horse's attention on me or just wait it out, let the horse do what they want to do if that's safe enough to me and the
right.
horse, and just be there, sort of holding that calm, grounded
Hold the
energy,
space. Yeah,
hold the space.
hold the space. I think
And
that's what I'm talking about is still not getting sucked into that. Like checking back in with yourself and saying, am I staying grounded? Am I breathing? All those things. So you don't escalate with what's going on the end of the line.
yeah, and visually, my image is always the horse has this big invisible bubble of personal space around their body, and I have at least an arm's length sort of invisible bubble around my body, but
Hmm.
360 degrees. And what I've learned is if me and the horse are get sucked into that action reaction game, then I imagine these two bubbles sort of pushing each other back and forth, right? Or in a tug of war or banging into each other
Bang. Yeah.
or scattered all over the place where it's hard to tell who's leading who or who's directing who. It's just two bubbles sort of chaotically everywhere.
It reminds me of cells when they get excited, they bounce around.
Exactly.
That's how geeky I
Exactly.
am. It's at a cellular level, which it is.
I think it's happening all the way down to a cellular level. I don't
Yeah.
have the evidence of that, but that's when I picture the invisible space around each body. I go, are we, colliding into each other? Is the horse pushing my bubble around? Am I trying to push the horse's bubble around? Are we scattered and just randomly, chaotically all over the place?
Nobody's in their bubble.
And all of that sort of visual image or actual movement is what I consider ungrounded.
Yeah.
Like there's not much you're going to do with that except keep playing ping pong, bubble to bubble. It's like back and
Mhm.
forth, back and forth, back and forth. So to stop that hamster wheel, I
Mhm.
go, okay, if the horse is really excited, you and your old personal space bubble belong far away over there. So we can connect mentally while we're physically at a safe distance. And then we're either going to choose a slow walk or halt, or I might have to remind my horse over and over. If they take off, get excited, bring them down to halt, start over, right? Or bring them down to walk and start over. And I'm just talking groundwork, but this would equally apply to riding,
Right.
right? And so because that's the bubble on top of the other bubble. So that's
Yeah.
harder to get that distance and
That's
even
right.
emotional distance or mental distance.
Yes.
So sometimes it's better to get on the ground and increase physical distance between the two bubbles until both bubbles can just sort of settle
Yeah.
and become still or quiet or rhythmic and slow, something. And that to me is how I go about what we're calling grounding myself or helping my horse ground. And it
Right.
is meditative.
Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, your heart rate's probably going to decrease. Your breathing is going to be more diaphragmatic and natural, just like you'd want the horse, you know? You want to be licking and chewing and blinking and just like your horse,
Well,
not that deer in the headlights look.
and everything you're describing is that sort of full transition through the nervous system
Mhm.
into dominance of the parasympathetic. So when we
Right,
talk grounded, we could say a parasympathetic state. It doesn't mean we're laid back, cool, and chill. It means that
right.
we're focused, we're organized, we're not in fear and chaos, right? Or
Yeah,
when,
we're adaptable and present, being present in the moment, not thinking of the list for holiday travel or whatever.
yeah. And so movement can be whether we choose halt or we set a slow, steady pace to a walk, movement can help us get there for us and the horse. If we can't quite get our brains focused, then just maintaining halt or maintaining a slow rhythmic walk can help the brain settle, can sort of
Yeah,
clear that emotional, it slow down that emotional hamster wheel from
yeah.
spinning so fast or being stuck. And and then we also can have our own tools. Like there's a lot of
Hmm.
people I learned from different meditation practices or um, even different people who are very good at their job say a lot of similar things.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know, that the mind has to be rested, focused, the body relaxed in order to do your best work, whether that's
Exactly.
physical work like it is with a horse or our job while we're sitting at the computer.
Yes.
So it's kind of the same. So there's a lot of tools and techniques out there for
Yeah, there
grounding
are.
ourselves. And walking barefoot on the grass, I've heard that one, that it
Yeah.
actually sort of like it probably stimulates a boatload of acupressure points on the bottoms of our feet and has a benefit.
Well,
Um,
it also goes to physiologically, most of your balancing muscles are in your lower leg and into your feet. So just getting on some uneven ground or something tactile like grass that stimulates all those senses going up through your
mm,
feet brings you more aware of being grounded. So it's a physiological thing that actually happens.
interesting.
Hmm.
And I wonder too, like each person learns strongest in either auditory or visual or kinesthetic ways. And I'm wondering if that isn't also something we can latch on to when we need to ground ourselves. So, in other words,
Yeah.
like for
Hmm.
me, I'm a very much a kinesthetic learner. I learn by doing. Like my hands have to be doing something to, or my body has to be doing something to
Right.
integrate the learning. So, a lot of times I take notes by hand because I don't have to go back and look at my notes. I remember because I wrote them by hand.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I have to write it down, but I usually don't go back and look at it. It's that connection
Yeah. Where
that,
an auditory learner can listen and just remember a lot through the words spoken,
right,
right? And somebody visual needs to sort of see it happening or see a change or see something in order to learn. And we all have all three abilities for learning or even grounding ourselves. But I think one modality, like for me, That's why trying to ground myself or stabilize myself involves movement. Sit still, walk slowly. It could also be slow, relaxing music for somebody.
Hmm.
Maybe the music makes the biggest difference, like all the meditation music or coffee shop music is sort of has that grounding effect. And for other
Yeah.
people, it's maybe visual, like getting away from visual input and stimulation, either
Good point.
closing the eyes in
That's it. Hmm.
meditation is huge,
Right.
or going someplace where you're not seeing a lot of activity,
Right.
right? Like a walk in the woods, or where
Yeah.
you're reconnecting visually with nature. You're out in the garden, you're focusing your visual focus onto flowers or butterflies or the tree or something that makes you feel good. And I think those can all be ways that we can ground ourselves when we're feeling
Right.
really scattered, busy, ungrounded, not connected, especially during the holidays.
The holidays. I did read something. It was something about the horse's brain on Facebook this morning about the horse learns behavior from us. They can learn. So if we're bringing to the table this ungrounded, busy kind of energy, I can't imagine how disruptive that is to them, being that they're prey animals. They need something that's grounded and
Well, that's
saying
their language.
just, yeah.
So how we are broadcasting energy
Mm-hmm.
is how we're speaking to our horse. So
Right.
yeah, if we're broadcasting a lot of anxiety, our horse is either going to not want any part of that or could match it, right?
Yeah.
Or could rebel against it, right? So it's like the horse has
Hmm.
choices. We don't think of that all the time,
We don't.
but each individual horse will say, "Ooh, I don't want any part of that," and become hard to catch all of a sudden,
I
right?
see that on Facebook. What do I do with a hard to catch horse? And I'm like, that's a lot of work.
And that can be part of that can be a horse, the horse itself can have a fear that needs to
Right.
be addressed, or it can be that our horse that's normally easy to catch is looking at our energy or sensing our energy from about 50 yards away, going, I don't think I
Get
want
away
any
from
part of
me.
that today. Yeah, yeah. Or if we are bonded with our horse, I think horses, and I see this a lot, not only with horses, but dogs, cats, children, are going to adopt the energy that we're broadcasting. It's all happening non-verbally, but it's going to create some cohesion in the relationship by
Right.
sort of matching energy, even if it's not desired energy. It
Right.
still is. And so a lot of times I'll find horses and riders are sort of similar in their struggle to
That's a good
change.
point.
The horse will match the rider.
Hmm.
And, the good side of that is the horse is, in a sense, bonding with their rider, but it's not, nobody's getting any real benefit out of that. It's
No,
become a negative
it's
cycle.
a chaotic situation.
It's a chaotic situation. That hamster wheel is spinning out of
Yeah.
control. Yeah. So we have
Yep.
to find a way to stop that and shift the energy.
And to realize that we are part of that equation. Way back when, I used to always think if my horse is acting out, it's just the horse. But now I'm in a place where I go, okay, well, what am I bringing to the
Yeah,
table? Where am I at right now? That am I adding to this? Am I helping? Yeah, I start asking all those questions. How am I grounded? Am I using my body well so that I'm projecting a healthy
that's
human?
that's the choice I'm talking about, and that is the
Hmm.
thing we can do is check in with ourselves
Right.
and really use the tools we have to get ourselves grounded in body and mind
Right.
and do what we need to do for ourselves. Because I think you hit the nail on the head. The reason we check in with ourselves first is to make sure we're not contributing to
Hmm.
the energy or the problem. But that is also all we can do. Because one of the things that gives me the eye roll is when people say, oh, if I'm right, the horse will magically respond because it's an animal, right? And it
Interesting.
creates this sort of like new age guilt where the rider goes, oh, I have to keep working on myself until my horse is better. And it kind of pisses me off because I go, that's really taking away the individualism or the individual sovereignty of that horse. Horse
Mm,
has its own emotional life. The horse has its own
hmm.
thoughts and feelings. What we can do, which is what you said perfectly, check in. Are we contributing?
Hmm.
Are we holding a calm, grounded space and adjusting what we're asking our horse to do in order to help our horse, or are we making things worse?
Hmm.
But that's all we can do. We
That's it.
can't we can't magically, like the horse whisperer myth. Horse whisperers can work faster than most other humans in a more subtle way, but it
Right.
never takes away the individualism or the sovereignty of the individual horse. They have their own view of the world, and they wake up in a good mood, a bad mood. They have anxieties, they have tension, they can feel calm and focused or not, right? And they have their own internal world that has very little to do with us until we're in a relationship with them, which means we showed up.
That's really interesting because don't you always hear things like, didn't we work through this already?
Sorry.
Don't you hear that? Like, uh, didn't we work through this a month ago? Why are we back here again?
Well, it's kind of like when the husband asks
And
the
it's
wife,
not, it's like, don't take it personal.
or non-horse person, I should say, when a non-horse person asks a horse person, why are you still taking riding lessons? Don't you know how to ride yet?
Actually, no. Maybe before I die, or maybe I'll have to be on the other side before I figure it out. But
Yeah, and I go, it's ridiculous. We don't expect somebody who got the basket in the net one time now has mastered basketball, or
right.
somebody who hit the ball with the bat has now mastered baseball or softball.
Hmm.
It's like, no, you keep playing it and practicing it for the sake of doing it because it's fun,
Right.
right? And I think what you're talking about is like, oh, my horse was calm yesterday, why not today? And I go, because a horse's mood is going to fluctuate as much as any person's. We don't
Right.
always know why, right? And it's like when I don't know, walk through the grocery store, I have no idea why some people are cranky and other people are friendly
Hmm.
and some people make eye contact and other people don't. I got no control over that and I have no idea
Right.
why. But as soon as we're in close proximity, we have a choice to interact or not interact, right? When we
And
go get our
yeah.
horse, we're interacting. So all
Hmm.
of a sudden, we're going to our horse saying, hey, let's interact. And your horse might not feel like it.
No, we get we we get so emotionally distraught if they don't want to be with us.
I'm so unloved.
And we
Oh,
think it's their fault.
right.
It's like, why don't you want to be with me? Well, I wouldn't want to be with that either, you know?
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. We'll have coffee another day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you calm down a bit, we'll have a talk.
Yeah. And
But
when
yeah,
we
I
can
can
see
always sense
that,
that.
it's actually really funny because horses are pretty brutally honest
Yes.
in what they have to say to us. And it isn't what we like to hear all the time.
No, it's not.
It's just kind of their honest assessment of our energy, body language, personal space, thoughts and feelings, all of that. They're downloading non-verbally, and then they make a decision. And it's the same magic that sometimes these horses that are difficult for experienced horse people are suddenly gentle, like a little lamb with a kid or somebody when they use horses as part of therapy for people. Those horses actually know their job and they're at their best. They're the one holding space for the person.
Right.
And when we work with our personal horses, if our horse is losing the plot, we're the ones that have to hold the space.
Mhm.
But it's a relationship, a back and forth of those things. And it's dynamic. It's like, why did
Right.
the horse respond to that person in a way that is atypical?
Right.
Because it's dynamic,
Yep.
right? And why does our horse suddenly go backwards in training? There could be a gazillion reasons.
Yes.
And maybe 99% of those gazillion reasons we're never going to really know or understand.
Exactly. And that's interesting because I just got done, and we'll have to discuss it in another podcast, doing a whole series of classes on the psychophysical aspects of pain, and that pain itself is considered a threat to the body. So it can trigger a whole lot of different psychophysical activities in horse or human.
No, I was actually just, as part of a course I'm taking, was reading about mirror neurons
Ah,
that we
cool.
have in the human brain. And it also explains why, like an amputee can have phantom pain,
Right.
is you can literally have the amputee watch another person have their arm massaged and the pain, the phantom limb pain, will go away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
We'll have
has
to
to
have a talk on
do,
that.
we'll have to look more into the mirror neurons because
Okay, I
that's,
can talk to Tim Cacciatore about that.
it's
He's
pretty interesting, but it's
mm-hmm,
why, birds of a feather shit on the same rock. It's because
mm-hmm.
when people complain, we also gravitate into complaining with other people because of these mirror neurons and our need
Right.
to have a social structure for safety. But we can get sucked into our horse's drama by watching our horse be anxious or
Yeah.
tense, again, because of these mirror neurons.
And the same
So,
back and forth, the opposite direction, like we talked a little bit earlier. They can pull some of our stuff that we bring.
and I think that's maybe why it's a trained skill for us to remember in that moment.
Mhm.
I think the mirror neurons are sort of guiding us instinctually to match energy or match what we're seeing around us. But there's another part of us that has a choice to go a
Right.
different direction,
Right.
right? And it's difficult. Probably physiologically, we're probably hardwired to fit into a group because that's how humans survive. But
Right.
when we decide that group doesn't have the energy I really want, or that's not in my best interest, we have to find a way to ground ourselves and come back into a place that we do want to feel or experience or clear our mind.
And
And
I think
that's,
that's huge to have that, to make that choice, to realize we have a choice whether to join the group, whatever energy level they're at or not.
and I think one last thing I want to add is it takes practice for us, just like a
Hmm.
horse.
Yes.
So, like I always tell people, I go, one good day of training or one good ride does not a trained horse make.
No.
It's going to go up, it's going to go down, like just like the stock market. You'll progress over time, but there's going to be a lot of ups and downs on the
Give it 20
process.
years.
Exactly. So I think for us, learning to ground ourselves, or if I put it in my
Hmm.
training terms, habituating what I call the learning frame of mind,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But we could also call that grounding. And when we discover little tools or techniques that work uniquely well for us,
Hmm.
which means we find that sort of grounded sensation, or we get back in the learning frame of mind, or we feel calm and stable and mentally focused again. We can practice that with
Yes.
our horse and without our horse. And the more we practice it, the more we're also developing a very strong neural pathway.
Hmm.
And I think, like during the holidays, that's when we need that neural pathway to be big and wide and strong so that we
And
can
practiced.
and practiced so that in the middle of, I don't know, that obnoxious uncle saying something dumb at Christmas dinner, you can just pull yourself back into a calm state and not have to
Yeah,
have that collision of bubbles over the holiday
right.
dinner table.
Exactly. And it is practice. It is.
It is practice.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. But with each time we do it, especially if we find something that's unique to us, like
Mhm.
sound or sight or kinesthetic, something that brings us back into a calm, quiet, mentally focused state, the more often we practice it, especially when we don't need it, the stronger it
Yes, I
becomes.
agree.
And then it is there when
Hmm.
you
It
do
becomes,
need
I
it.
think it becomes more available. Yeah, it becomes more available. You access it. What I've found is I can access it quicker. It comes
Yeah,
to me sooner when I actually do it. And you don't have to be practicing, you know, a big length of time. You could take a minute to, maybe it's a word that comes into your mind or a breath or whatever, and then just move on with your day. You're not going to stay in it forever,
right.
but
Everything changes.
everything changes, but you can always access it.
You can
You can
keep coming back to
always,
it.
yes, it's always available to you. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
like
that.
people will ask me, how do I get my horse safe on trail rides? Or how do I go to the show without my horse completely losing the
Hmm.
plot? And I go, it depends on what you're doing daily. If you're asking
Hmm.
for your horse to mentally focus on you during your entire work session, and the two of you are in a calm state, both feeling safe, then I become associated with that feeling of safety in
Yes.
my horse's mind. So the same way we could do it over holiday dinner, if
Hmm.
I'm riding a horse and the environment of the show or the trail suddenly stimulates my horse into a fear reaction,
Hmm.
I can just get the ears on me. I can
Exactly.
bring my horse's attention back to me, and they instantly begin to calm down because of that
Right.
practiced
That practice
association.
state. It's a
Hmm.
practice state of mind, a state
Yeah.
of being. Yeah.
But then when you need it, once it's good and strong, when you need it, the world is going to throw something at you and your horse that you don't expect. And you can say, hey, focus on me. I'm calm, or I'm calming myself down. And why don't you join me?
Yeah.
And let's
Yep.
ignore.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. It's all there. It's available.
And that's how your horse becomes adaptable to all these different challenging environments. It's
Hmm.
not a matter of desensitization. I go, you can't practice desensitization with every potential object or situation that you're going to encounter,
Exactly.
but you can build a very strong conditioned association between, hey, horse, focus on me, I'll focus on you. And when we do that, we both feel calm and grounded.
Hmm.
So the more frequently we practice that, the more it's there when we suddenly need it.
Yeah.
That's how I get a horse trail worthy. I
Right.
build trust.
It's trust.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Anything else you want to add? I think that kind of covers a lot,
Oh, a lot of stuff. Stay grounded, everybody.
especially during the holidays.
Especially during the holidays. I like
Yes.
Holly D-A-Z-E.
Yes.
Right. And happy solstice to everybody.
That's right. I mean, the end of the year is just such a big it's a winding down of our calendar year. It's like a slowing down period. The light changes, what is it, December 21st,
Hmm.
right? We start to go from days getting shorter to days getting longer in the northern hemisphere and the reverse in the southern hemisphere. And it's a time of change.
Yes.
So it is a good time. Maybe when we take a break from shopping and we have to go see our horse, we just lower our expectations for
Yeah.
that time with
Just
our
enjoy
horse.
being present with them.
Yeah, and
They'd
work,
appreciate it.
yeah, work on letting our horse, because horses love doing nothing. That's what they do all day. So doing nothing with us makes perfect sense to them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And maybe go look at our horse as a place where we can slow down, relax, reground ourselves during this time of year.
Hmm. I like that.
I do too. Even if our horse is blowing up, we can
Yeah.
practice on ourselves.
Yes, we can. I do it
Yes,
all
we
the
can.
time.
And isn't it funny? I go, there's all kinds of things going on in the world that affect us more than we give them credit for. But it's like you. I go, I had the same week feeling ungrounded myself,
Hmm.
having the
Yeah.
horses sort of like suddenly all the training fell off. It's like,
Yeah, that was my week and and with clients coming into my office. So it always amazes me how that works.
yeah. All right, we will
All
wrap it
right.
up there. Thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast. We look forward to seeing you next time. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really supports Deb and I, especially to keep going and do this, finding something to talk about week after week. And also, if you have suggestions, questions, or
Yes,
comments, we love those.
we do.
Okay, see you guys later.
Bye bye.